Hello, thanks for joining me for 2nd Samuel in summertime. Today is Thursday, June 3rd, and this is the 3rd chapter of the 2nd book of Samuel. In the 2nd book of Samuel, we have a list of the sons of David, and I will list them to you now. Since this is a commentary, I will pause on the ones you need to remember. Amnon. Remember Amnon. Chalib. Absalom. Remember Absalom. Adonijah. Remember Adonijah. Shephatian. Notice how Amnon, Absalom, and Adonijah roll off the tongue. This isn't the last we've seen of them. But Shephatia. And last, Bob. Just kidding. No. His name is Ithream. Itream, if you pronounce it. Anyway, those are these 6 sons so far, because we know David has more sons than this. And I'm sure he has daughters, but as we'll learn in this story, women are considered pawns in the larger scheme of things. So the rest of the story is how women are used as pawns. This is what happens. Saul had a concubine. Does everyone know what a concubine is? I don't need to explain it. Google it. Saul had a concubine. And Abner, remember Abner is the general who survived even though the brothers were going after him. Abner takes, apparently, according to Ishbaal, who was the king, the son of Saul, takes her in a wifely way. And Ishbaal confronts Abner about this. Why do you take this woman? And Abner fiercely defends himself. He is very angry that I've done this for the house of Saul. I've done that for the house of Saul. And you're going to accuse me of this problem? And it's just a concubine, man. No big deal. We don't worry about this stuff where I come from. So Abner's so mad at Ishbaal that he trades allegiances. Now, we have to go back and think about this because this is a really fast switcherooski. And I think that Abner sees the writing on the wall and wants to back the right horse. Ishmael, not quite doing it. They're having a disagreement, and so he sends a message to David. I will support you. I'll be your guy. I will bring the people with me, the Benjamites, I think mostly, ones that are left at least. And he says, to whom does the long be land? Make your covenant with me, and I will give you my support to bring all Israel over to you. David said, good, I'm not coming with you. No problem. All you have to do is bring Michal back to me. Remember Saul's daughter, Michal, who actually is married to another man. So again, women are pawns. Like, does Michal have any say in this? No. So Abner does what David asks. Bring his Michal back, and her husband is walking behind them crying. And Abner says, go home. You can't do anything about this. She's not your wife anymore. Go home. So this happens. It's this kind of precursor to what happens with, I guess, Bathsheba. But I think we kind of gloss over these parts because they're not that significant in changing the course of the history of the people, but they really are negative in terms of the agency of women here. There's the concubine who they fight over, and then there's this demand that Michal be returned to David since now he's the king and he can do whatever he wants. So that happens. Abner returns. Abner comes over to David's side, brings with him 20 men, meets David at Hebron. David offers him a feast. Jewish hospitality, right? Israelite hospitality. So uh, Abner says to David, I'm going to go and rally all of Israel to support you. And so David says, okay, you go do that. No. Abner was there in the king's court, in his clutches. And David let him go to further the campaign for David's kingship over everything. Now, who returns from being away but Joab? Now, if you remember Joab, he is the brother of Asahel, that when Abner was being pursued by the swift-footed Asahel, Abner tried to push him away with his spear and ran him through and killed him. So the two brothers, Joab is one of them, and the other one has a complicated name, which I can't really remember right now, but there's two brothers, it starts with A. They return, and they learn that Abner came to the king, and the king dismissed him, and he went away in peace. And Joab's angry because he says, why did you dismiss him? You know that Abner, son of Ner, came to deceive you, to learn your comings and going. He was a spy. You shouldn't have told him. David knew that Abner had moved over to his side, but Joab can't see that because he's filled with, familial angst. And he's angry about the death of his brother. So they went and got Abner, Joab and his brother, and they brought him back from the cistern of Shirah. But David didn't know any about this. And when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gateway. So I don't know how these people got there, but anyway, they Joab takes Abner. He captures him and he stabs him in the stomach. Describes it very clearly here how he died. So he died. He died for shedding the blood of Asahel, whatever I don't know pronounce his name, Jacob's brother, and after Joab's brother, and after when David heard of it, he said, "Now, remember how this important this was to David to not harm a hair on Saul's head. David does not want to be guilty of killing Abner, and so he's like, look, I didn't kill Abner. Joab and the brother, whatever his name is, that's real complicated. He did it. They did it. I did not kill him. His blood will not be on my head. And may the guilt fall on the head of Joab and on his father's house." And then David said to Joab and to all the people who were with him, "Tear your clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn over Abner." And King David followed the bier. He buried Abner at Hebron, and the king he lamented over him. And so the people wept over Abner. And because Abner was a general, he did protect the people of Israel. He did like what David said about Saul. He put garments on their daughters and gold bracelets on their daughters. He did help the people of Israel as a general, especially when he was, when things were united before David and Saul had their split. And when David laments over the death of Abner, it's a unifying event, right? All the people that were following Abner, that were loyal to Saul, it's all sort of consolidating the power around who David is now, because he's loyal to every part of Israel. Now, in this, he's a great politician. He really is succeeding politically. He says in the very end, to the king and his servants, "Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? Today I am powerless, even though anointed king. These men, the sons of Zariah, are too violent for me." So, even though they were supporting David in the beginning of this campaign, because they unwisely pursued Abner after he had killed their brother, David has washed his hands of them as supporters. Now, I would imagine they didn't have a lot of people with them. I don't think they had a lot of following, or else David wouldn't have done this. It's not a very good political move. But Abner had a huge following, and possibly this is a good thing for David's enthronement. So it's just this story, it brings about more questions than it answers, and it's very disturbing how women are used so just negatively as pawns in this whole game. And I think that one of the things we need to remember is this identification of the different sons of David, and it identifies who all their mothers are. I don't know if that's important at all. Of course, again, women, they're not that significant. They're just pawns. However, I think the birth of Solomon, which will come much later, is a very significant story for us in the whole story of David, because he has all these sons, and yet the one who will inherit the kingdom has not even been born yet. Something to think about. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. It has a rough, the rest of it's really rough, and before it ends, it gets worse before it gets better. But I hope that you will lead into these questions, ask more questions about it, and it's kind of bloody and gross, but stabbed him in the stomach. Eesh. Hope you have a good day, though. Enjoy reading chapter 3 in 2 Samuel.